we briefly kind of mentioned this. I think we'll start the show with this. We briefly kind of talked about this last week, that there are some potential leaks. So potential warning, right? I mean, we kind of know what happens in the story, but just sort of a cool idea. I guess some people have said they saw this in episode 1. Other people have said, I've seen things saying, no, it's towards the end of the season. The idea that somehow Aegon the Conqueror finds out about the White Walkers, and it's a sort of secret that is passed down the lineage, gets lost during the Dance of Dragons, and then must somehow get rediscovered by Rhaegar, or I guess Egg,
maybe, yeah,
right? Egg, and then it begins to become an idea again. So, did Aegon the Conqueror? Let's just start there. Know about the White Walkers.
Yeah, and see, this is one of the things that George talks about, like changes that they wanted to make in the show that might actually be better, and that he is sort of Gurm approving, right? It's Gurm approved. Which I think is awesome. Now, this is again leak rumor. We don't even know if this is true or not, but it's the idea that Aegon would know, or Dany's the Dreamer, or anybody sort of, that was again foreseeing the doom of Valyria. And then you kind of like, all right, why unite? Why did the Targaryens sit there for a while and on their outpost, and then they said, you know what, it's time to take our dragons. We need to do something. We need to conquer. Right, they make the painted table. They start to lay down these plans. Aegon does with his sisters, the 3 heads of the dragon. Here, a real symbolic kind of start. It's something that Dany is wrestling with in the series. Right, Dany is. We're all kind of, when we theorize about Winds of Winter, who are the 3 heads of the dragon, and why does that matter, and why do we need that in terms of pushing back against the White Walkers or this ice and fire situation? So the last time we really see this, or when we first kind of hear about it, is Aegon the Conqueror, the 3 heads of the dragon, and there's a need for them to kind of be united, and for symbolic, who knows, maybe there's some magical thing. It feels like something's been lost over the years, as Matt said, like in the Dance with Dragons, like it's lost, something happens, and then maybe Aemon and Egg and some of the Targaryens down the line, they discover, like, what was it all about 300 years ago? 300 years ago, what were our ancestors trying to do in uniting Westeros against a common foe, or some enemy, right? That's so the idea.
Yeah, and so I was just listening to the clip again where George is talking about it, and George describes it. He's like, well, there's some speculation that Aegon knew, and that's why he decided to unite the 7 kingdoms, and all of these things. And it's like, of course, George, when George says there's speculation amongst like maesters and all these things, it's like, bro, like, come on.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it does sort of change a lot of the narrative, because we've often talked about, like, what exactly is it that Rhaegar reads when Rhaegar reads something and then decides, like, I need to put down the it's time for me to put down the books and pick up the sword.
Right.
So he picks something up. We know he spends time at Summerhall. So I think it's easier to work back than try to work down. So Rhaegar clearly reads something that causes him to essentially launch a civil war. We did know he potentially going to, if Rhaegar hadn't have done that when he was young, do you think he would have tried to depose the Mad King?
If he hadn't have done that earlier? Yeah.
Let's just say that he does decide 3 of the dragon, all that stuff.
Right.
So that is real. Would he still have tried to say it's time for my dad to move aside?
See, I think because he does do all of that, like, that's what you're saying, is that, like, we're saying that he does have those visions, he does do that reading. That is what maybe causes him to say, we need to go in a new direction. Otherwise, I don't think so. I think the time, again, this new direction, unless it's just like that his father is a threat and is tarnishing the Targaryen name, which you could go down that line of thought. But really, maybe he felt like something more prophesied. Clearly, he felt like there needed to be this union and this blood match and the 3 heads of the dragon. So that is on his mind, and it's a direction that he wants to take the realm. And to tie it, we'll work back here slowly, but still, that seemingly is what's being speculated that Aegon the Conqueror wanted to do, that there was a need to go unite the realm against this threat. So yeah, it feels like a different direction,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, at some point Rhaegar decided, hey, I need to put down the books and pick up the sword. So he began training out of nowhere. So he clearly reads something.
Yes.
We've also speculated the idea maybe it was Bran, future Bran,
Oh,
working
yeah.
his way back, and
Tenfold,
also
baby. Yeah.
Blood Raven, all sorts of stuff, right?
Right. Right.
So we know that there is that is out there, that the potential for that exists. But clearly Rhaegar was reading something. It doesn't say what he was reading, but
Mhm.
he decides this is the direction I need to go. Once
Yes.
he goes in that direction, he then goes on to marry Ellen Martell
Yep.
and all this thing. So he had been training for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going in that direction.
Right.
He tries with Ellie Martell, it doesn't work. So then he tries Lyanna Stark. Now the idea of like the 3 heads of the dragon going back to Aegon the Conqueror
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes sense, because Aegon the Conqueror is 1 head of 3 dragons.
Yeah.
And in his mind, I imagine he would think I need this pact would be the thing. If they were to ever come, that's what we would need to defeat them. We would need to be united, because Aegon is not really united with his sisters.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not truly united like with
yeah.
his sisters. So I could see in his mind, if we were united, we could defeat anything.
Yeah.
Because they did. They came over and conquered Westeros
for sure.
in like a week.
No problem.
I mean, it was like no problem. I mean, it wasn't a week, but sort of seems like it. This is pretty easy. Just fly here, burn, fly here, burn, just burn. Yeah. There we go.
Bend the knee, baby. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rhaegar, you go all the way back down. Rhaegar is probably thinking, I need 3 heads of the dragon. He's probably reading it as a little more prophetic, I guess, than what maybe Aegon the Conqueror, who's the one who's really probably telling. He would have told what Aenys, and then somehow
passed on to Jaehaerys and so on. Yeah,
it gets passed on to Jaehaerys and gets passed on the line, gets lost during the Dance of the Dragons, because there's leaks and stuff saying, so again, potential spoilers, that Jaehaerys is going to tell Rhaenyra about it. That's the you're the next in line. You're the true heir. Like, you are now gifted with this knowledge. Right. So
hold on a second.
Yeah. So that's kind of kind of what the deal is. That's like the true passing to the heir is, there is this secret thing that could be the fall of everything. And it will be your job at some point to potentially shut that down.
Wow.
It could also explain why when Egg must figure it out, Egg begins to want to get dragons back. Aerion Brightflame tries to turn himself into a dragon by drinking wildfire. I mean, it could just be that he's, crazy.
Yeah.
Or it could be he knows about it too.
Yeah.
And then when Summerhall happens, almost everyone dies.
Right.
So then that secret is potentially lost again. But Rhaegar spends a lot of time going back to Summerhall, and he spends time, and he talks to the Woods Witch.
Exactly.
And he probably learns a lot of this stuff. So he clearly maybe in some way was trying to understand what went wrong and what happened.
Yeah. And understanding a secret that, or, kind of this mantle that was passed down to the leaders and to the leaders of the family, in which, he is one. So, and if Egg was trying to discover that, and then again, he's an infant during the time of Summerhall, and they were close to sort of rediscovering maybe the secret or what their purpose was, or the prince that was promised, right? That's the whole thing. The Woods Witch is, also talking about what was, the prophecies and all these different things. So if that's something he's trying to rediscover, it's a thing that's lost. Even Aemon is wrestling with it when he's on the boat with Sam. He's trying to figure out the riddle. He's trying to understand things, and that prince versus princess and all that stuff. So the family has lost something. It actually even makes more sense in terms of this fight between ice and fire. You know what I mean? It really actually makes, even though we see Jon being a Targaryen, fighting against them, cool, makes sense and everything. But the family would want to be protect. It's not like the threat is here now, but we know, we have foreseen that it will come. We don't know when. This is the thing. You're not given super clarity on when these things are going to happen, but you just make sure every generation is ready to face that threat by having 3 heads of the dragon, by having a united front, or whatever it is. That's something that they're trying to rediscover. And things, George does this, right? Which is, stuff gets lost over time. The story changes over 300 years. And
even thousands of years.
Exactly. And Maesters decide to tell one part of it, or they documented this, or somebody was killed, and then, or the Dance of Dragons happens. And so bits of information history and knowledge is lost along the way. That actually seems very fitting with the way he writes and with what the story he wants to tell. And it seems very real world. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
To me, and we've talked about this too, is even in the World of Ice and Fire book, as it goes back and it explains, you go back and read about the Dawn Age and potentially this Azor Ahai character. There's also like the last hero, and there's like the Sword of the Morning, and there's the different regions describe a different character who was the one who sort of put down the Long Night.
Right.
And so there you have multiple different versions of potentially one person who was the one who defeated them long ago. Then we get to like the three heads of the dragon and the prince that was promised and all of these other things, which feels like it's separate, but sort of goes along with it.
Right.
So like the three heads of the dragon could just be Aegon the Conqueror's idea that also somehow gets skewed with the idea of the Azor Ahai character, and they get blended together, which we've talked about as well. So the potential, the idea to me of the three heads of the dragon coming from Aegon the Conqueror makes way more sense than coming from Rhaegar. Because where does Rhaegar get this idea of three heads of the dragon? Well, if he gets it as this Targaryen secret that's passed down the line, and maybe some people interpret it, maybe let's say Viserys telling it to Rhaenyra, he thinks about it as, well, what if it's me, you know, my wife, who a lot of them took Targaryens, and then my heir, and we are the three dragons.
Right. Yeah.
Which then kind of goes into the idea of the prince that was promised. Like maybe Rhaegar's interpretation of it as I need three kids isn't even correct. I guess, you know, from Aegon the Conqueror's perspective, it would be three, because it would be him and his two wives.
Yeah.
But it could be, in theory,
well,
it could be a Targaryen and their sister wife, you know, or whatever, because that's they're Targaryens, and then their child could be the three heads of the dragon. That's like a united family.
Right. You can have different sort of scenarios as to whether it's
who the three are.
Yeah, who that third would be, or who the whatever. Yeah, because you had the Woods Witch sort of talking about that prince that was promised, or this idea that was going to come from Egg's line or whatever. And so Rhaegar, you know, maybe you think it's you, and then it's not me. It's further down the line. But clearly there is something, because Dany has this idea. They get visions, or when they go, I think she's in the house, the Undying, or I forget where she's at exactly. But she has the thought is the dragon, or that there must be three heads. There must be. So some sort of calling, some sort of premonition, some whatever comes to them, where they, throughout history, they get warnings to preserve themselves, right? So Dany's, the dreamer, right, it has a premonition that they need to leave and flee Valyria. It's to save them, right? So then, if other members of their house have dreams or visions that would help to preserve them in some threat, some distant threat or whatever, I feel like that makes a lot of sense that they, you know, for Aegon, the interpretation of that was he and his two sisters. But for Rhaegar, he has to interpret that, and he has to say, okay, what does that mean for me and my family right now? How do I create that scenario and have this trio, the power of three, which it's sort of a magical number, right? It's the idea that you have three things, and that they would be united as one against the great other, or White Walkers, or whatever. Yeah, it comes down to your interpretation. And then, as you said, it gets sort of blended with this prince or princess that's promised, that it's almost like that person is in some way, and you can go look at the wiki and all the different thoughts and different theories on this, in terms of like, what is if you're kind of lost here or whatever, like what is the prince that is promised, or princess, or whatever. It seems like that gets merged. And like Matt said, over time, the heroes get sort of blended into one. And were they one, or were they many? You know what I mean? Were they different? And we've lost that story over time. So yeah, it's tough. That's the beauty of it.
If this whole idea does essentially, like the three heads of the dragons sort of specifically, and in the threat to the White Walkers with that sort of correlation, it would explain why Aegon the Third would be like, it's time to get rid of dragons. Like we don't really need them anymore, because the idea is it gets lost with Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And so then when Aegon the Third comes in, who's the ones who's like start to get rid of dragons. Well, if you knew that this threat of the White Walkers existed, you would not get rid of dragons. I mean, that's kind of the that's kind of the
Yep.
whole deal is not only are you Targaryens and you should have them in the first place, but if you don't think that this threat exists, you could be like, well, we don't need them. But if you do know that this threat exists, that you would need something so powerful like a dragon to take care of, there's no way you would get rid of them.
Yeah, well, this almost blends in with another topic we wanted to talk about, which is like, like Viserys passing that on. See, the heir is more, I know there's the Council of 101 AC and there's all this different stuff and who's to become the heir, but hidden or like an undertone or whatever, an extra element here is that the heir or the king or queen, whoever, has this knowledge, has the foresight, has the access to some knowledge that preserves the family and that preserves the realm. And so by him not being assertive, I think you kind of brought this up, and I think some of the guys you said we're talking about this in the chat, that
we have a just for those of you listening, I talk about it every once in a while. I reference our group chat, which is like some of Ez and I and some other some people in our little community, like Sir Jimmy, who runs this on YouTube.
Yep.
He's in there.
Sir Ryan, Sir Matthew, shout out to those guys, because we get a lot of good conversation in there just about this topic. And so especially Sir Matthew's been losing his mind in there, by the way, recently about a lot of rereading and stuff. So it's cool because you can this stuff matters. I think that what they want to do in the showverse, you need something like this. You need something for fans to, like a theory, a tie through, to that main series, that, oh, this is lost. This information is lost here. It's the thing that would make people kind of rally around. Like, if you catch on to it, it could be enough to like rally around Rhaenyra. She's the true heir. She has the information. She's told something. And maybe he wasn't, maybe the significance of this information loses its value or loses its whatever over time. And as you're passing that down, the importance and the significance gets lost. This is a tale. This is something from Aegon the Conqueror. Okay, cool. We get it. It's a role I need to play. But no, like, just like the whole idea that there needs to be a Stark in Winterfell. Maybe there's some magic to that. Maybe over time, that's just a phrase that they say, but maybe really back in the day, there was some good reason why we needed Stark blood, or there's some spell. I mean, there's spells, there's magic, there's power in this world. It's seemingly gone or has been gone dormant for a while, and it reemerges. But it feels like maybe the series was not as forward as he should have been in letting the realm know that. I mean, he does come out and say that this is my heir, and he puts her on Dragonstone and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But then he goes and he has more kids with Alicent. And those children, you know what I mean? Those children then feel a claim to the throne. And it's like, what is Rhaenyra then going to, when he dies, is Rhaenyra going to pass the secret on to them? No, she is the ruler. She believes she's the ruler. So it's this whole dance and it's this confusion that causes this thing to be lost, squandered,
right.
And unless you have a dragon, unless that, like in the family, that gift, that Rhaegar and Egg and others like later on will have, the dreams start to come back, a warning, a foreboding that something's going to happen. Then they start to, puzzle out, what was it that was going on? Why, why does there need to be 3 heads to the dragon? Who, the prince that's promised? Why is this something that's emerging? Those things are things that they'll wrestle with, that their ancestors maybe had a better understanding of. But again, it comes down to interpretation too, which George is really good with. Like, okay, you're given a vision, or Melisandre interpreting the flames, right? Misinterpreting the flames, I should say. So, there's the greater question is also even whether they're interpreting them correctly. Did Aegon interpret those dreams or that vision or whatever correctly? So it's just a cool element that I think, if it's added into this series, could be sort of one of those subtle things that is more alluding towards magic and the higher fantasy realm. But we're going to get lost in the political backstabbing and all the moving of resources and who's next in line and that sort of stuff. And the real important stuff gets pushed backwards, which is, I don't know. It's cool. And I feel like it's unique and it's different. And this all comes down to George just saying that, right? That there's just there's speculation. George, you make the speculation. George is the one, conjuring up all this stuff. He writes the, what the maesters speculate about. So it's just kind of funny to hear him sort of say that,